Oh, God. A team from Florida will make it to the playoffs. Whew. You know I'm high on one team. Don't act surprised because it's a team that you caught a lot of shit for as well this year. I do. I really do. And I think it's Florida State and Jordan Travis, baby. This is the year. This is the year, man. I think it's going to happen. I actually think was torn between two teams on this. It was Oregon and Florida State. I still stand my ground on both those two. I think one of those two teams gets in. I actually think both those two teams could possibly run the table more than likely. That's a tough one, though. It's definitely not Florida. Graham Mertz, you know my thoughts on him coming from Wisconsin. I've seen enough of him play. We talked about Miami. They're not going 11-1 or 12-0 this year. If I had to put some money down on this, the more and more I'm starting to like Florida State than I do Oregon in my predictions this year. And we'll probably release those later on, Christian, right? Like kind of what we think at the end of the year as far as before the season starts, where we'll see what we're all about and put our money where our mouth is. But, man, I do. I think Florida State does make it. I know I'm really interested to hear your thoughts because me and you had quite a disagreement about Florida State earlier this year. And go ahead, Christian, give it to me real here.
I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, I want to start off by once again apologizing to a lot of the Florida State fans. Apparently, I riled some people up, and I guess I went back and I looked at it, and I'll always own my mistakes. I was probably a little bit of a hater, if you will. I was drinking the haterade out there for Florida State. Look, I think Florida State has the best chance out of everybody in the state of Florida to make it to the playoffs. I still think, right, because they have the most talent and they have the longest tenured coach out of a lot of these programs we're getting ready to mention here. I still think they can lose to LSU week 1, but I think if they win out, which they should, right, they have a great shot at it. Florida State, to me, again, can absolutely and should absolutely win the ACC. I'm actually, I'm not as high on Clemson as I was in the past. I'm a lot more higher now on Florida State. I think Miami, I think they might be next up out of all these teams, believe it or not. Okay. They should be a lot better. We just kind of talked on them, but, again, it really depends on how far can, Tyler Van Dyke progress this year and what can they really do. And then they also have to beat some of these teams like Florida State and Clemson and all these other teams we just kind of mentioned if they want to have a real shot at it. UCF, to me, is the third team if we're ranking this. So Florida State, Miami, UCF. Look, dude, UCF is America's Cinderella team. I mean, they do a really good job at always playing the underdog there. They've got John Rice Plumlee, who's played a ton of football, transferred from Ole Miss. I think they've got DeMarcus Bowman, who was at Clemson and then transferred to Florida and then transferred into UCF. So they got some good playmakers there. The issue that I've got, though, Chris, is they're jumping over to the Big 12 this year.
Big problem.
So, yeah. So, I mean, they're going to step up in competition. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do playing much tougher opponents each week. I mean, it's a huge difference when you go from the American Athletic Conference to the Big 12. Be like going from the Big 12, like Texas and Oklahoma are getting ready to find out it's going to suck going to the SEC.
Yeah, 100%.
Lastly, Florida. Look, I will not backtrack on this. Florida's got the toughest path because they play in the hardest conference. And they might have one of the worst offenses in the entire state of Florida.
Oh, but it's that defense is so great, Christian, after that spring game. Defense. The defense is so great. That's why they had extra time. Extra time. The defense is going to be all-time greatest defense ever in 2023, Florida Gators. That's all I heard.
I'll make some of the Nebraska fans in the chat here pretty happy with this. I think Wisconsin is really, really missing Graham Mertz, and that says a lot because their offense is going to look like complete dog shit this year. I mean, they can't even hit people, on a simple slant route, let alone, throwing it pretty much in stride to a defensive back in the spring game. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do. But anyways, we're talking about Florida here. Yeah, man, Florida's in a rough spot, but to me, this actually brings up a really good talking point, Chris. I got a feeling in about a year, we're going to look back at this and we're going to say at the end of this year, believe it or not, when college football is done and it wraps, Anthony Richardson I think, was holding the Gators together, and he wasn't holding them back like a lot of Florida fans believe. What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny you bring up my boy, AR-15, right? Big knock on him in the NFL draft. Just didn't throw enough passes. Haven't seen enough of him, right? Got all I heard. It's funny you bring him up. All I heard was, oh, he can't throw the ball. He's very inconsistent, can't throw the ball. If you guys go back last year and watch him play, and I actually watched him film on him last year, just recently. You know how many fucking drop fucking passes or receivers could not get open? I mean, I don't care who was playing quarterback there. You could throw fucking Joe Burrow back there for Florida last year. If your receivers can't create space and you can't catch a football, man, it makes it tough. AR-15 got a hell of a rap last year for being like a terrible quarterback. We hear some comments, Christian. Didn't we hear some comments that thank God he's gone, get the hell out of here, whatever. Are you kidding me, man? I know he didn't throw a ton of passes, and I know he didn't play a ton there. Kid was ultra talented. There's a reason why the Colts drafted him number 4 overall. I don't care. And then people are going to throw in Johnny Manziel and all this other bullshit about Jamarcus Russell and all these other guys that were drafted super early and didn't shoot in the NFL. Whole different story. My point is, though, they're going to miss him. I think he did. You make a good point. I think he kind of did hold that team together last year. I don't think he had a lot to work with. Florida hasn't been the most stable program, Christian, lately. I mean, they really haven't. Between quarterbacks, issues on and off the field, productivity over the last 5 years, coaches coming in and out. Man, they've had a lot of fucking problems there. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But to answer this question, man, I am very high on Florida State. I right now I'm leaning Florida State to make the playoffs. If I had to put some money on it today, I probably would over my Oregon. I kind of have give you a hint inside my predictions this year before they start the season. We're going to kind of go through, I think, Christian, and talk about who our Final Four teams are essentially at the end of the year or before the season starts here in a couple months. But there's a lot to be determined yet, but I think Florida State's got the best chance. You did say something about Florida, though. They do play in the toughest conference. Absolutely. The SEC's no fucking joke. I know that. I hate to stroke your ego more than it is over there with Georgia kicking everybody's ass. And Christian, may I ask this question, though? Yeah. Are you hating on Florida because they're your rival?
I'm absolutely not. Listen, I thought about this, and you go back to the mid-2000s, early 2000s when Florida had Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow and everything like that. I'm not trying to hate on Florida. I want them to be good because it's a good competition. They won national championships. We are winning national championships. At this point, I understand Georgia trying their reign over college football. It's probably not going to happen this year for them. That's my personal thoughts on it. I just want the rivalry to be good. Man, that's all I want. If Florida does better, college football does better, right? I'm not trying to hate on them.